welcome again to another episode of NCBI's podcast. I'm June Tinsley, Head of Communications with NCBI. And as part of this series of podcasts, I've had the pleasure of interviewing lots of different individuals who are blind or visually impaired and living life to the max. And today, I'm certainly meeting one of those individuals. Good morning to Nikki Hind, who's based in Australia, would you believe? So while it's good morning for me, it's definitely good evening to Nikki.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us.
I feel very excited about joining you, being somebody who visited and lived in your country for 3 years when I was younger, before I lost my vision.
And what's your abiding memory of Ireland then?
You won't be surprised to know the pubs, the atmosphere in the pubs, the live music, and the cold, the pubs, the cold. Well, the cold, but the social warmth.
That's a lovely way of saying it. So yes, we're warm of heart, even if we don't have the weather to go with it.
Indeed.
But let me just explain to the listeners that Nikki is Australia's first legally blind fashion designer, which is a very impressive accolade to have. And I suppose, Nikki, if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit how you got involved in fashion.
Yes, sure. It was, I actually lost my sight from a stroke at the same time as I became a mum. So that was in my early 30s. I was born legally blind in one eye, and then the stroke, being a brain injury, wiped out the processing of 50% of the field of vision. So now I can see out of half of one eye, the inside half of my right eye. But when I was younger, before I lost my vision, when I was a teenager and a young adult, fashion design was just always that lovely kind of happy, creative escape I went to in my mind, my little daydream. I just loved it. I would design things in my head all the time, and I would watch. At the time when I was a teenager, there was only one fashion awards in Australia called the Golden Gown Awards, and I would sit and watch that on ye old fashioned TV. We didn't have streaming stuff. You had to actually wait for when it was on and sit down in front of the TV, and I would watch it, and I would draw my own designs and daydream about them, seeing them strutting down the runway. But I thought that was terribly impractical. I'm a really rather practical person, so that's not something I pursued, but it's always something, I just constantly design things in my head. And as a young adult, I used to create things, and I didn't even really know how to sew, and I just cut stuff out and put it together, and sometimes I'd staple it together and everything and wear it to the school socials, and I just loved it. So when my rather practical life kind of came apart at the seams in numerous ways, wasn't just the stroke, just the loss of vision. There was kind of a series of traumatic events, both leading up to it and after, that just left me in a position of, being a legally blind sole parent to these two beautiful little boys. They were only very young, 1 and 3. Totally financially destroyed. I just had nothing, was left with nothing, and really struggling with the effects of post-traumatic stress syndrome. Right. And it was really awful. I was feeling very, very crushed, and I just like I was trying to live under a heavy, wet blanket, which is horrible enough. But I guess what's even more horrible is being there with your two beautiful children, these two beautiful little boys. So I guess it was that it was just that there was no way I wanted to be an unjoyous, unconfident, distressed mum. That's just not who I was, and that's not the mum I wanted to give to these two beautiful little boys. So it really is from that point. It's that from that position of love and wanting to be the best mum and create the best life for these beautiful little boys and be the best role model that I could be. And at the time, it was just instinctive. At the time, I just instinctively reached for a dream, an aspiration, something that was kind of strong enough to pull me away from the anxiety and the fear and the isolation. And so I just so it was fashion design. I threw myself into that, and I went back to TAFE and studied enough of it to create the garments, and then I just threw myself into creating my very first collection in 2015. So that's the seed of Blind Grit. That's where it all came from.
It sounds absolutely phenomenal, the journey that you've been on, and more power to you to kind of find that inner strength when faced with, as you say, challenges and trauma and the daily reality that you were experiencing at the time. And I suppose what strikes me is from an individual who had more vision and then obviously suddenly having less vision, the daily challenges that poses to you as a parent of two little boys, and the kind of, can I ask kind of what strategies or tips you adopted to even undertake the very menial daily tasks of parenting, be it nappy changings or meal preparations or those kind of things which you had to do and yet had to relearn to do because now you had less vision?
Yeah, I'm very lucky because the part of my vision that I have left is kind of, it's quite detailed. It's very odd. I describe it to people almost like I'm living in a dream sequence. When you're dreaming and you kind of look around your dream, so to speak, you feel like you can see everything. But then if you kind of try and focus in on something or get a hold of something, it just dissipates and things aren't quite where they are. I don't see things where they are, and I have no peripheral vision, and I have no ability to hold anything in focus. I can pull things into focus for a split second and then I lose it because I only have half of one eye and you need two to focus.
True.
So I think I was actually very hard on myself because there were things I could still see. I think I set the bar very high, and I think it was hard for me to accept that I was now blind, essentially. In Australia, we will call what I am blind. I describe myself as legally blind, but and it was exhausting and stressful. It happened at the same time as I became a mum for the first time, and an awful lot of people comment, "Oh my God, that must have been so incredibly difficult." I am so grateful it happened at that time because it just kind of, although it was difficult and stressful, it just kind of had to take a back seat to the being a mum. And I guess it's also forever entwined with the best thing that ever happened to me, the most wonderful two little beings in my world. So, I mean, if I could go back and tell myself something, it would definitely be, don't be so hard on yourself. It was very difficult it felt like lowering the expectations rather than just adjusting them. I would get so frustrated with myself for not being able to do all the same things and not be able to do them as quickly, for being tired all the time. And when you're a new mum, you're tired all the time anyway. But I was just exhausted, and it took me a long time to realise and accept it's actually very tiring. Being blind, being visually impaired is very tiring. you're constantly focusing and refocusing and trying to take things in, all this information that is not quite visually clear to you. And especially when you've got two little kids, you know, trying to cross the road with them and trying to keep an eye on them in the playground. I would dress them the same. Happily, they didn't mind that at all. Dress them like little twins so I could see two of them together there, and I think, yep, that's them. So, yeah, I guess one of the absolute key things I did purely out of necessity, but then I thought, this is nice, this is a good thing, was slow life down, slow it down a lot, because of course I couldn't drive. So I had to get places using public transport and taxis or walk, and I had these two babies to get ready and try and line up with the bus timetable or whatever. And so just slowing life down, I just can't fit in as many things as I could pre-loss of vision.
Yes. Nice, as you say, you have to kind of embrace that as well, because otherwise you'd be so frustrated and annoyed at yourself, excuse me, that it'll just add to the pressure, instead of enjoying the pleasure of being a mum and all that goes with it.
Absolutely, yeah.
And tell us, your company Blind Grit, as you say, that it is obviously a fashion house essentially, and with your vision, you are able to see colors and textures and fabrics and all that goes with the necessities of fashion, I presume.
Well, firstly, I don't know that I'd call it necessity. I don't know that you have to see the texture or the colour or any of that to be a necessity of fashion. I would argue that that's not so. That you can feel it in your fingers, you can feel the way it fits. However, I can't really see textures. I wouldn't say I can see textures. I don't really have any depth perception. So I can't really see the textures, but I can certainly feel them. I can see colour, and I love colour. And I guess I absolutely love the way things feel when they are on, and beautiful fabrics. But yes, I can see the colour. What I can't do is really do the, well, I could, but it would be just ridiculously fatiguing and take just much too long. It would not be sustainable, is do the pattern making, the traditional way with cardboard and rulers and things. I just cannot see down to the millimetre, and I think being able to measure down to the millimetre is crucial in a design. So I'm actually just looking at, so we've been outsourcing the pattern making and the sample making for Blind Grit's first collection. However, that has just not played out in a way that I'm really happy with, in a way that's sustainable, really. Australia is not the place to be getting things manufactured. That's not our strong point, sadly. So, yeah, for the next collection and then going forward, I'm going to invest in, for the business, the wonderful new technologies for pattern making. You have to know how to pattern make to do it, but I do know how to pattern make. But of course, you can do it all on screen, and not only can you zoom in, so a millimetre might be 10 centimetres, you can look at things in 3D, and you can put your garment on a 3D, icon on the screen, and you can sit them down and change them around. So I get really excited about that. I don't have it yet. I will be getting that at the start of next year and learning it through TAFE here, because I can't see the screen well enough to teach myself. I get very familiar with something and I overestimate my vision. I think, I'm not legally blind, I can see this. And then you put me in an unfamiliar situation. I think, oh, good grief, I can't see a thing.
Okay.
So I will get taught it, and then I'll think I can see the whole lot of it. But I mean, the beauty of that is, you can create a design, and then people can send in measurements, and they can order your design and their measurements, because you can put it on you can plug it into the program, and it can adjust the pattern. So for, people who are missing a limb, or people of short stature, or people in a wheelchair, you can adjust your creation to sit really beautifully on whoever would like to wear it.
And I suppose in essence that's really what Blind Grit is all about, isn't it? Is creating clothing, be it leisure wear or anything else, for individuals who have a disability, and it's all about embracing the diversity of people, isn't it?
Well, it is about embracing the diversity of people. It's not actually about making it for different body types and different abilities or disabilities per se. However, I would like to do that, just because I think it's a really good thing to do. Why wouldn't you? But no, what Blind Grid is about, and it appears to be the only one in the world who does this. I'd love to hear if people are better at researching than me, if they can find someone else who does it. Blind Grit is built entirely of and around those who live with disability, and I include in that those who survive trauma, because it's definitely a social disability. It very much gets in the way of standardised employment, and it's an invisible social disability. So when I say built entirely of and around, everything except the manufacturing will be done by those who live with disability. So the modelling, the photography, the hair, the makeup, obviously the garment designing itself, graphic design, social media, public relations, an absolute plethora of aspirational or dream jobs that sit behind the creation of a designer fashion label. So it's kind of two thoughts behind that. Certainly one, that there's a very strong focus on entry-level positions for people who live with disability.
Yeah.
Still, it's one could argue we're starting to get a little bit better. There's certainly more people who, certainly more academics who live with disability. But I think there's still a very strong focus on entry-level positions for people who live with disability. So it's the idea of the strength of tapping into one's dream, one's aspiration. Because I guess when I got to the end of creating my first collection, I realised what I'd done intuitively was that very thing, worked on that strength, that power of the approach motivation needing to be more powerful, a stronger pull than the avoidance motivation, which are
Yeah.
the things you avoid out of fear and worry. And it has to be quite powerful. And so the idea behind Blind Grit is the combination of aspiration, validation, and motivation. So aspiration in creating positions that are aspirational, dream jobs. Validation in terms of telling, I call them our Blind Grit angels, telling their story from a strength-based perspective,
Yes.
and having it validated both by Blind Grit ourselves and socially, as in, wow, that's impressive, because
Yes.
it is. And then motivation in terms of, if you have something you love doing, let us know how we can incorporate that in Blind Grit, and what you want to tell the world, and we will show the world through the platform of fashion, through Blind Grit. So that three-pronged approach inspiration, validation, motivation is just so powerful in helping release people's potential. And I guess something I feel very, very strongly about is that kind of the privilege of aspiration, the privilege of having a dream, which I think able-bodied people tend to take for granted, because you ask, all kids will have been asked, all of them, what do you want to be when you grow up? All kids have their dream, what they want to be. And I think for the majority of children with a disability, that can just get pulled out from underneath them very early on a few different levels. One can be, they're just kind of straight out, told, well, you can't do that. You can't, you can't be a pilot if you're wheelchair bound. You can't be an air hostess if you're wheelchair bound. You can't be an air hostess if you're blind. You can't be a fireman if you're hearing impaired. I don't know,
Yeah, exactly.
that level of no, you can't actually be that dream thing. And then I think another layer is, of course, the people who probably love them the most and who worry about, oh, I don't want their hopes and dreams to be dashed, so try and encourage them in a different direction. That protective layer, which is so understandable. And then, of course, the third layer is socially. You don't, the kid who wants to be a president or a prime minister, who does not see people with disability in politics. You were telling me before this podcast that you have some visually impaired people in politics there, and I'm very impressed, because I don't think we do here in Australia. There's still precious few of them, still precious few people with disability in decision-making positions in society worldwide. So, I think that's.
I suppose it's really on, to go back to your point earlier, it's just to unleash that potential that is within everybody and to harness it. And in this case, to harness it for blind grit perspective, to harness it through the lens of fashion. And I mean, it is totally unique what you're doing. And I hope, as you say, there are other visionary fashion houses operating across the globe, but I certainly haven't come across them myself. But tell us, how does people who are interested in the clothing that you make, are they available in high street stores, for example, or are all products have to be purchased online? How does the other end of the fashion business work?
Yeah, well, we are certainly launching online only, because it's it's just easier and cheaper and more far-reaching. And sorry, blind grit is actually athleisure wear. So athleisure wear, for those who don't know, is fitness gear that also looks good. So that the joke is always fitness gear that no one ever intends to break a sweat in. But our stuff you'll be able to break a sweat in as well. So that idea of pushing out of your comfort zone and the people behind the creation of your blind grit wear, when you slip into it, you can borrow that challenge conquering energy in order to push out of your own comfort zone. So it's athleisure wear, of course, all of which is nice and stretchy and kind of not. I think some things are much more suited to online shopping than others. Like, I'm not sure, it's hard to buy a pair of jeans or a tailored something or another online. Yes. So yes, we're online currently, but having said that, in my vision, the bigger the better. So if we're big enough that we then have an opportunity to open stores, that just creates more jobs, more aspirational jobs, and that's that's only a good thing. And if there are ever stores who would like to stock our products, I guess I would certainly want to know that they were also employing people who live with disability in quality positions in that store. And I will be delighted about that as well. Yeah, the bigger the better. But initially online, and I have to say that COVID has absolutely put a massive spanner in the works, as with many, many businesses.
I'm sure.
With that, part of it has been my choice because I wanted to launch our first collection in a particular way, because for me it's very much about our people, our blind grit angels, and that I want to be able to do a photo shoot that we're happy with and that we can all come in together. And at the moment where I live, we can't even cross the border, and we can't get to the nearest city, and we can't gather more. You can't gather outside your COVID bubble. I'm not sure if you use that expression there as well, but you have to choose a bubble of people to be involved with. So I guess I could launch it, but I'm just waiting until I can launch it the way I want to with our awesome blind grit angels. So currently, if you go onto our website, you will see our store is sadly closed, and I do apologise for that. And it was a hard decision to make, but it's really, really important to me that I get to launch it the way I want to, and in a way that creates fabulous opportunities for the people
that it deserves,
involved.
really.
Yeah. So
I mean,
it's
to be fair, if you
still
and
on.
your blind grit angels have put so much time, energy, passion, aspiration into the creation of these um, athleisure wear, then obviously you want to make sure that it gets the ta-da type of
Yes,
unveiling that it warrants.
yes, that's true. That as well. Yeah, but we have a wonderful opportunity with Unilever, who are a massive worldwide company, with one of the arms of Unilever here in Melbourne, who are going to work with us for our first photo shoot. And of course, we can't do that at the moment, but wonderful opportunities like that mean that our models and our graphic designers and our photographers and hair and makeup people can work with real, with people who have an awful lot of experience and great skill base, and frankly, the resources as well, because it can be very, very difficult when you live with a disability to have the resources to be able to work with fabulous photography equipment and graphic design equipment, and just that bringing together of the two worlds, all the people, and that's the stuff I live for. I absolutely just love it, and we can't do that currently, and those things are very, very important to me, those real quality, aspirational, just they're so much fun, just such fun. So I'm waiting till we can do, till we can do it in a way that's totally fabulous.
And let's hope you don't have to wait too long. But it's unfortunately none of us have a crystal ball to know exactly how soon we can, I suppose, progress a bit more of a normal life than we are at the minute.
Quite right. I am starting to look at maybe another little avenue to kind of pre-launch the first collection in case we have to wait too long, because we did wait a long, long time, and then poor Melbourne went under again. So yeah, I mean, I am flexible. It's just the experiences and the opportunities for my blind grit team are, I won't say more important, but certainly is of equal importance as the product and the sale of the product. I have to have a good product and the sale of the product in order to have the brand and the label and the message and the means to grow it bigger. But I will never do that at the expense of the experience of the people in blind grit,
Well, that's
because that's key
understandable.
to me.
Yeah,
Mm.
and to be fair, you've been building it up for the last couple of years, so you'd be
Yes,
undermining it if you cut corners really at this stage. Um,
yes, yeah,
and I suppose just for listeners who may be interested to learn more about blind grit, they can jump onto the website, which is blindgrit.com.
it is.
All I would like to say, Nikki, is thank you very much for your time. Thank you for sharing the passion that you have for your company and the amazing attributes that you bring to it. And I wish the company a huge success into the future. And thanks for your honesty too, in terms of describing how living with low vision has challenged you and how much you've embraced it as well.
Thank you so much, June. Hopefully, I'll get over to Ireland with Blind Grit one day, and we can do an Irish photo shoot. That'd be pretty fabulous.
That'd be fabulous. That'd be fabulous. So I look forward to that, and we'll try and ensure that we have a bright, sunny, warm day to facilitate that one.
No, that's far reach.
We live for the dreams here, definitely.
Yeah.
Um, and as always, if anyone who's listening is interested in accessing any of NCBI services, please feel free to contact 1850 33 43 53.